All right, everybody, how's it going? Welcome to another installment of Otaku Bros. Uh, this evening, I am here with my good friend Gio from A Week in Geekdom, and we were gonna be doing an episode on Akira tonight, but a lot of the other Otaku Bros couldn't join in, so instead of doing Akira, Gio came up with a quick and great idea to talk about some books that we love that we think are essentials in not just in any manga reader's collection, but just essential books that we think that anyone who loves manga or maybe even just wants to get into it should check out, should be reading. So I've got a decent stack of books, and Gio should have some as well, and we're just going to talk through those. We'll go through those, talk about what we like about them, why we think that people should be reading them, and then if we have some time by the end of the night, take some questions from our viewers, which we always love to do. So, how have you been recently, Gio?
Super tired, but I am more than happy to host with you another installment of Otaku Bros. Just ready to have some fun with the chat with you, Ryley, and everybody else watching later on. And I'm very interested in the chat's opinion of what they think should be an essential book. I think my list will be a little bit different compared to everybody else's, but that's the beauty of the show, where everybody can, geek out about this stuff.
For sure, seriously. I think the definition for me of a book that when I was looking at my shelf, something that's essential, I think something that transcends its own genre and it transcends the medium of manga. So to me, I try to pick stuff that I believe that people who are not already fans of manga can start with and really appreciate, and they won't be turned off, because I know that there's a lot of series that people will be like, if they're fans of superhero comics and stuff, they might not really fall for these. But these are books that I think are going to be great for those types of people. And there are a couple that I wanted to pull, so I might just talk about them, or at least one of them. But I'm still in storage until basically this time next month is when our house is going to be finished, and I will unbox everything, and I'll finally have my library back. So there was a couple things that I don't have access to right now. All of the series that we're going to be talking about, or at least the majority of them, are going to be available on the website of our fantastic sponsor, InStockTrades.com, where you can buy tons of awesome comic books and manga collections for up to 50% off. There are loyalty discounts of 2% off, free shipping after $50. Amazing customer service, and really stellar packaging all the way. Most manga, I know from like popular publishers like Viz, are going to be around 30% plus off. So that's a really good discount, especially when you compare to other prices that you can find online. So again, InStockTrades.com. We know them, we love them, we order from them, and we spend way too much money with them. There you go. That's my plug. I don't have the jingle like Jess, but there you go. So, Gio, why don't you start with one? What's at the top of your list here? What do you have?
Well, I'm going to get it out of the way because everybody's going to mention in the chat, and everybody's going to mention it in the comment section. I think an essential, some would say modern masterpiece, would be One Piece, the famous Shonen Jump manga that's been going on for 22 years or something like that. I think it is timeless. It is greatly written, fantastic, wacky, wonderful artwork, and a story that transcends the medium. I know a lot of people that are One Piece fans but aren't necessarily manga fans. Same with the anime and stuff like that. And they just like a good adventure with characters that you can relate, that they can teach you a moral lesson, I guess, somebody that you can root for, and stories that are, that's my phone, stories that are well written and interesting for new readers and old readers. And I think it should be a part of the collection. Maybe the one thing that could knock it off would be the size and the task of collecting it, because if you collect the single volumes, you're investing in like 90 plus volumes. Like there's also box sets, and there's the 3-in-1s, which are the ones I have. I don't have them with me at the moment; they're over there. But there are alternatives, or you can just read it digitally. But I think it's a series that should be read by everybody, should be consumed in some shape or form. So yeah, One Piece would be my first one.
Nice. I know we talked in depth about One Piece. Was that episode 4 of Otaku Bros? I think 2 episodes ago.
Something like that. Yeah.
Yeah. So all of us talked a lot, and I couldn't say anything. I couldn't disagree with what Gio said at all. The biggest turnoff, I think, for a lot of people is definitely the size. I've seen a lot of people make memes and jokes about like people basically being like, "Oh, try One Piece. It gets good after 200 episodes. Do it, try it." But it's like I think I mentioned before on the last time we talked about it, like I'm not trying to be one of those people, but it's definitely a series I think everyone should give a try, and there is a reason why it is as popular as it is. It does a lot. To me, like as a series that's in the shonen genre, it fills all of the boxes of a typical shonen series, while at the same time kind of blasting through those boundaries and making everything you expect from a shonen series, but like better in a lot of ways. And it's grown so much. And one of the things that, like, for me, having started reading that series when I was probably around 12 or something, I've grown with the series. The series has grown with me. And I have experienced the growth of these characters, and I've experienced the growth in the level of maturity of the series itself, because you see it from the beginning where it's a lot more silly, and not that it loses that silly charm later on, but it definitely progresses and becomes more mature, not just thematically, but like in the way that the story is told. And that, I think, is a lot of the growth of the author, of Oda himself, right there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I definitely have to say One Piece is a great pick. I figured one of us would choose it, so I didn't pull it off my shelf. But I did choose another shonen series that I think is transcendent for that genre. And that is Hunter x Hunter. Can't really with my light on here. So Hunter x Hunter is it's been running for almost as long, if not a little bit longer than One Piece, but it's significantly shorter, like almost 1/3 the length, because of the fact that it's been on a lot of hiatus. So that makes it a little bit more easily approachable to new people. But for people that have been reading it for a long time, like myself, I've been reading it since I was like a freshman, so in high school, so that was about 15 years ago. I've been with it for so long, and sometimes it seems like, oh man, it hasn't really progressed that much since a certain point, but it's so good. I know it looks, from the cover of the first one, and I picked 3 covers just to kind of show that it's not just this goofy looking guy. So the premise of One Piece, the premise of Hunter x Hunter, you have these people called hunters. Are basically, they have access to a lot of things in the world, and they're people that try and, let's say, search for people, they search for animals, they search for food, they like are in a search for something in their life, is an easy way to put it. But to become a hunter, you have to go through this just grueling exam. And the beginning of the series highlights the main character Gon, as he enters into the hunter exam. And as he's entering into the hunter exam, he is met by a lot of really interesting characters throughout. The hunter exam takes up the first several volumes of the series, and from there you get into a lot of different story arcs, meeting a lot of very interesting characters. I pulled a couple other volumes, like I mentioned. So this one is a later volume, but it does show 2 of the primary antagonists in the series, Crollo Lucifer and then Hisoka. So these are 2 of the main antagonists that you see the characters face off against. And it's cool because they're antagonists from pretty early in the series, but they do survive and they last throughout the series. And now that it's a lot later, like they're still around years and years later. So I really like that because it gives growth to those antagonists, which is something a lot of series, both in manga and in Western comics, they eliminate the antagonist once they're done, and then you won't see from them for a while. So this is kind of more like a superhero thing to do, where you, instead of eliminating the antagonist, you see them return. Like, you know, Peter Parker has fought the Green Goblin a million times. It's not like the same way, but you see that progression in their growth as well. You see that with One Piece too, with a lot of their antagonists like Buggy and Blackbeard and stuff. And then this volume shows kind of a good mix of the different types of characters that you'll see, the chimeras and some of the other hunters and stuff on there. So, and a really good example of more what to expect from the artwork in the series. It is written and drawn by Yoshihiro Togashi, who is the same creator of the very fan-loved series Yu Yu Hakusho, which was definitely a favorite of mine growing up when I was in middle school.
Totally.
Fantastic series. I've been wanting to revisit for a long time, just haven't had a chance. So that is my first pick for something. I think that's a fantastic series that people who are not into manga, that is a good series to show them what the genre is capable of. It's a good, you know, foot in the door type thing.
Plus, a lot of people tend to reference Hunter x Hunter when they're talking about how, like Shonen Jump titles, for example, how all of them feature the same type of tropes and they do the same type of arcs. Well, we can use this as an example of a show or of a series. Sorry, inverting a lot of themes and doing things a little bit different to stand out a little bit more.
Yeah.
I definitely was caught by surprise. I had always known about the manga, but I hadn't read it. I watched the anime this year and instantly fell in love with it. And I have been picking up the manga volume slowly. So yeah, it's definitely an interesting title that I think a lot of people will like.
It's a lot. It definitely. I think it toes the line between almost being seinen in like how mature it gets. I don't know. I need to revisit Yu Yu Hakusho. I don't know if I enjoy Hunter x Hunter more, but I've had it with me long, or I haven't had it with me longer, but it's a longer series than Yu Yu Hakusho, and I've been reading it actively since the past 15 or so years. So I think it's had more opportunity to make a bigger impression on my life than Yu Yu Hakusho did. But Yu Yu Hakusho entered my life when I was even younger than that, like 4 years prior. So it had a lasting impression on my like development, my like introduction into watching anime and stuff. It was, you know, it was like Pokemon and Dragon Ball Z, and then Yu Yu Hakusho was exactly like the next thing right there. So I really need to revisit Yu Yu Hakusho to give a proper answer to that. What's your next one, Gio?
If my shirt is any indication, and if you enjoy horror, I think I think Junji Ito books are a fantastic addition to anybody's library, simply because not only does it provide a bizarre body horror experience, but you also get some clever satire on day-to-day life and the things that we do and how we interact with people, nature, and of course urban legends and all that stuff. And it's great for that. And like I said, it provides great horror imagery. So if you like scary, spooky stuff, you cannot go wrong with Junji Ito. To me, he is one of those master of horror writers out there. And I love everything that he's done. Some works are a little bit tamer than others, but for the most part, the whole catalog is pretty solid through and through.
I love his sense of humor in his books too. Like it's something where it's horror that's I don't know if this is the best comparison, but it's the best I can think of. But like, it's like when you watch a Sam Raimi movie, like the Evil Dead
Mm.
series, where
Mhm.
things are just like off the wall ridiculous,
Yeah.
and it's frightening at the same time. I think that Junji Ito's work has a better handle on how scary it can be, and a lot of it is by like imagery because it is drawn, it is a piece of art. Um, and he's so good at that imagery, but at the same time, like you get a lot of that like this is so stupidly ridiculous type of comedy, like the
Yep.
situations, like the his I think his two best works are going to be Uzumaki and Gyo, like solid right there.
Hmm.
Gyo is just it's ridiculous because it's just
Yeah.
fish that get attached to fart powered bug things.
Exactly.
And so like it's and you get panels and pages like when they have the walking shark attacking them and stuff that are just like ridiculous, and it's
Mhm.
hard to not, when looking out of context, it's hard to not see it as hilarious. But when you read in the context of stuff, he's so good at immersing you in the story that you forget how ridiculous these things are until after you're done. And you're like, wow, that was good. But wait a second, it was all farts? Like what? Like that's basically when I read it, that was my reaction. And then Uzumaki is just insanely ridiculous, like the
Yep.
idea entirely, and just so much just weird imagery, but where you really get a lot of the comedic factor of his work is in a lot of his short stories. And the so they animated a lot of them for that show that was honestly not good at all, but the show is a great way to see like those the comedy factor on those things taken to beyond, like taken to 10, because it's so awkwardly acted and
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
that like anything that it doesn't suspend your horror. It like
Mhm.
it stops your sense of dread, and you only obtain that like comedic sense from the show. But it's a good way to see what's funny about
Oh yeah, that
Ichiro's work.
anime, it tried to imitate the humor and the social commentary and the horror, but it just came off as slapstick comedy. Like
A
there were,
lot of it, yeah.
it was like 13 episodes,
Yeah.
and I think like three of them were genuinely good. The rest were like, okay, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, it's better to just read the stories. A lot of it, and this is true about a lot of things, a lot of anime, the issue was with the pacing. Um, because a lot of those stories are really well paced in the way that the panels and pages are broken down, and it helps to flow with like the horror and how scared like you are turning the page, like, oh, what's about to happen. But the show didn't do it as well.
Hmm.
So my next pick is a favorite, an absolute top manga series of mine that I think is something that every manga fan should read, and it's a great introduction to this genre of manga, and that is Slam Dunk.
Oh,
Slam
nice.
Dunk. I talk about any chance you give me. I will talk about Slam Dunk. Um, this I think is probably the best intro and possibly just best period sports manga. And a lot of people I know, before I read my first sports manga, which was Eye Shield 21, featuring art by the guy who does One Punch Man, and story by the person who writes Dr. Stone, just to be contemporary.
Hmm.
Um, I was like, why would I? I don't care about sports, and I know there's a lot of manga fans who do, and that's a completely different thing. But like for me, I was like, I don't give a crap about sports. Like, why would I? Why would this be good? Why would I care about this? And it reminded me, like in my head, I was thinking about those young reader sports novels that I used to find in my high school, or not my high school, my like elementary school library, that a lot of the kids like that played basketball would read because they needed reading credits for their report card or whatever, so for their English class, and they would read sports books, and it was like,
Yep.
the high school baseball team had some drama because of whatever, I don't know. And I was just thinking about that, and I'm like, that's lame. I don't why would I want to read that? And I tried Eye Shield and I freaking loved it. And so then eventually, and it took me way too long to get on it, I finally, a few years ago, got Slam Dunk, and I absolutely adore the series. So the series focuses on Hanamichi right here, and he is basically just a high school punk, ne'er-do-well guy who inadvertently joins up with the basketball team because he makes this one girl believe that he can play basketball. And he tries to keep up the illusion that he's a basketball player, thinking that the fact that he's strong and he's fast and he's really freaking tall would automatically make him a good player. And he soon thereafter learns the fundamentals, and that none of those things are what make you a great player. And so the series goes on to cover one season of Shohoku's games. And Shohoku is a high school, and like follows them throughout the tournament and them basically just towards their goal of finishing in first place in that tournament. And we get to follow that whole season, that whole semester of these kids' lives, as they get to know each other, as Hanamichi learns how to play the game and learns about how much it actually winds up meaning to him. And what really I loved about it, there's two big things. Number one of the best things about it is just the character interactions and the camaraderie that you wind up feeling between these characters on this team, because he comes in there and everyone's like, this punk sucks, like he's not good at the sport, he thinks so highly of himself, he calls himself a prodigy even though he's never, like, he doesn't know how to bounce a ball. And eventually it leads towards everyone feeling these connections, where by the last few games of the series, the team has really held together and become so amazing. And the friendships there, it's a shonen series, so it's all about friendship, are just incredible. And I absolutely love every freaking character. Like, all of the characters in that book are incredible. And the second thing that I love about this series is how amazingly paced it is. The pacing of each of these games is so incredibly well done that I was reading a book in like less than 20 minutes, because you're just sitting there, like I was sitting there like sweating, like, oh my god, like what's gonna happen, like I was actually watching a game, just like rooting for this team, like pulse pounding, sweating on my forehead, like, oh my man, this is like intense. I've never read a single series that made me feel the same way. Not an action series, not any sort of seinen series, not anything outside of manga has made me feel the same way that Slam Dunk does. The series is 31 volumes long. Here's the last volume. They made it the awkward horizontal cover. You can see like all the different characters from the team and all the supportive people. Hanamichi gets sour backwards, so I'm kind of like... he gets a haircut, so he gets his pompadour buzzed, which boo. I love the pompadour. I love the look from the beginning. This is my favorite, like pompadour and leather jacket. Perfect. Actually, not a leather jacket. He's just got a school jacket. But 31 volumes from Shonen Jump. It's an earlier series, so if you find some of the earlier prints, they might be $7.99, but otherwise it's just the regular $9.99. I cannot recommend it enough, and it is by Takehiko Inoue, who is also famous for... He has another basketball series. He actually has like multiple other basketball series, but in America we have Real, which is the ongoing wheelchair basketball series, which is fantastic. And then he is known for Vagabond, which is the ongoing series based around the samurai Musashi, I believe.
I think so. Yeah.
I still haven't read it. I recently actually bought the rest of the volumes I needed last month, I think. So I'm waiting on one more volume to come in the mail right now, and then I'll be able to chow down on some more Inoue.
Yeah, he does, David. He does look a little
it's
like
that fiery red pompadour, but Kuwabara's got the sunken face look, like he's a lot thinner. And then he got the Yajirobe voice in the American anime.
Yeah. By the way, if anybody's wondering, and this is a free plug for Crunchyroll, they have on their YouTube channel a couple of video essays, and they did one on the significance and importance of Slam Dunk. and how Inoue is such a hardcore nerd for basketball and
Dude,
his love for NBA and all that stuff. It's a great video essay. I loved it.
he knows the sport so well. And I watched a video of him, and he plays too. He'll play basketball. He knows basketball inside and out. It's perfect. It's the perfect amount of like sports mixed with character drama,
Mm-hmm.
mixed with that shonen sensibility,
Yeah.
of like, the fast-paced action and stuff. It's just so good. And Real is also fantastic. I didn't pull it from my shelf, but that one it's a lot more mature because it's intended for an older audience and stuff. It's also not completed, but it's fantastic. All right, Gio,
I mean,
what's up?
plus sports per se, they are pretty dramatic because people are rooting for a team. There's drama, player interactions. So I think that lends itself for a sports manga to be great.
It's
And
the same as like good guy versus bad guy,
mhm.
except it's not typically actually a bad guy. It's just your team versus other team. Every once in a
Exactly.
while you'll get another team who's like, oh man, that guy's such a dick, like he's so mean, he's evil. But then usually what I've seen in sports manga is like the bad guy winds up kind of redeeming himself, and they're like, oh, he's actually not that bad. Like I feel like that happened multiple times in Eye Shield, where the
Mm,
bad guy was like, it turned out he was pretty cool. But anyway, what you got
yeah.
next?
Next, I was going to actually. I can still choose the title. I'm going to go with Naoki Urasawa, and I want to say Monster, but my heart is in Pluto for some reason.
Dude, that's literally what I have up next is on my stack is Pluto. And my heart said 20th Century Boys, but I also grabbed Pluto because I was like, that
Yeah.
series needs to be talked about. So talk, and we can talk together.
I mean, like, there's something, even though it goes into like darker sci-fi, there's still that sense of grittiness and realism. And Naoki is very famous for his crime stories. A lot of his work revolves around that. I think Monster, Master Keaton, Pluto, etc. He does a lot of wonderful work with characters that are they can be a little bit mysterious that have he
Uh-oh, did we lose Geo?
hold on. Am I okay? I'm back. Sorry. It
Back? Okay.
involved like usually he casts a very wide net and it features a ton of characters and a lot of subplots and it can show you how intricate a manga can be with a story like it. And Pluto, we have sort of this darker retelling or reimagining of Astro Boy and those characters. And it's so awesome that you can like he fanboyed so hard and had one of his childhood memories, and he was able to twist it in such a mature and gritty way to do a story like Pluto that I love Monster and all his other works, but for me, I think Pluto is the standout for Naoki.
I think it's just so tightly told.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way, because it's only 8 volumes. It's
Yeah.
only 8 of these signature size volumes, and it's it's got a great middle, or it's got a good beginning, middle, and end.
Mhm.
It's so tightly told in those 8 volumes, 64 chapters. There's really no space wasted. I remember when I was reading it, and it was only earlier this year that I was reading it for the first time. I couldn't put it down. I was so enthralled with it, and it wasn't like the fast-paced action of a shonen series or like Slam Dunk or something, but it was just one of those. It's just reading such an intriguing like mystery story that you have to know what's going to happen on the next page. You have to know the answer to what's going on, who did what is this, what does that mean,
Mm-hmm.
and you're following along with the characters, and like unraveling this stuff as they are, and it's just so well told. And I love these interpretations, these modern interpretations of these characters, because I never actually read the Astro Boy story myself, but I did go in and look at like the original versions of those characters, and just seeing his versions, these new versions of those characters, which have that kind of that Tezuka sensibility to them, but updated for this more mature modern take on it. But he expands a lot on a shorter story by Tezuka, and he does a lot to really implant emotion into this story about robots, which we would commonly look at as being emotionless, which I think is really one of the biggest things about, like, and one of the big themes on it is, you know, what at this point in humanity for them, like, what makes a robot different from a human in a lot of ways. Because these robots are conscious, and they grow, and they have families, and they, you know, they have purpose.
Exactly.
What makes them different from me or you? So it's a beautifully told series. I love it, and that's why I pulled it as well. I still haven't read Monster though. Still haven't on it.
Monster, I have to admit, I did start reading it, but I never finished. I do know the story because of the anime adaptation, but it's one of those things that I do want to get done by the end of the year. I do want to do a read through of Monster, but I do prefer Pluto because it is such a tightly constructed tale, and it is shorter. Monster's what, like 18 volumes or 9 volumes of the bigger editions?
Yeah, it's there. Monster has 9 large editions and 18 smaller ones. The 9 larger ones I think are pretty much all in print, but I think some of the smaller ones might be hard to find at this time.
Yeah.
And then the next one that I had in the stack I showed already was 20th Century Boys, also by Naoki Urasawa. I've read the entirety of this series. It is currently being published in these thicker perfect edition, or whatever they like to call it, trade paperbacks. These collect 2 each. There, I believe, will be 12 total, and they're on volume 4 currently. This series is similar in the way that I felt about Pluto, in that my phone thinks that I'm talking to it again. So 20th Century Boys has that same feel to it of like, I need to know what happens next. I need to know what happened next, because originally I bought, I think I had the first 9 volumes of the original paperbacks. Yeah. And I was like, okay, I'll read those just to see what I think, and then I'll wait for the thick paperbacks and stuff and just continue like that. I couldn't wait. Like I read those, and then I I read online, I read scans of the rest of the series, because I was like, oh, I'm going to buy it anyway. So I read scans of the rest of the series, and I got through it so fast because I was just so caught up in the story, which the story there is basically this big, it's a big murder mystery, which is basically the same as Pluto. And it's just a big, like, who's behind this, who did this, who's doing this, and what is this? Tons of questions, and it spans across like 3 generations. So it's this story that you'll see pieces of it told back when, you know, the main character here is a child, and then he's an adult, and then it goes to another generation after that, and it spans these 3 generations and tells this big unraveling mystery about who is the who is this man, like this masked man that they're looking for. Yeah. I don't want to give a lot of information because it's better, I think, to go into it cold and just kind of like learn everything as you go. Yeah. But if you're interested in it, I know some of the smaller trades are hard to find, but the bigger ones that have been coming out should be pretty easy. They're only on volume 4, so there's not a ton to pick up, and you can easily get in and catch up soon. I highly recommend it. And that's one that I think is a good one for non-manga fans to kind of see what type of storytelling is possible within manga outside of the shonen genre. It's a really good kind of show of something that I feel like fans of independent Western comics would like. And some of like the classic Vertigo titles, people that like those would like this. Just the way it's told, the way it's drawn, the way that it's narrated and stuff is really something that they would enjoy.
I had the first of the older manga volumes, but I gave it away because I want to upgrade to those editions. But I've never read 20th Century Boys. I gotta admit, I haven't read it yet.
Well, I think if you enjoyed Pluto at all, I think it's something that you'll really enjoy. It's great all the way through. It has a really solid payoff.
Cool.
And I love like trying to solve that mystery with the characters and trying to piece it all together.
Mm-hmm.
I know the whole time I was reading it, Luis was like, "Did you figure it out? Have you figured out who it is?" And I'm like, I don't want to say yes because I don't want to look up spoilers, and I don't want to say anything because I don't want you to spoil it for me. But I was just like, I don't know. I don't think I did though. I don't think I figured it out.
And does it have a different volume at the end that's named differently, or am I imagining things?
You are definitely not imagining things. The last 2 books in the series, or the last 1 volume of the perfect editions, is 21st Century Boys.
Ah, okay. Nice.
All right, what you got next?
Something that a lot of people are probably wondering, why hasn't he included it yet? I am talking, of course, about one of many fans' favorite book, a dark fantasy epic, something very violent, something very gory, and of course, I am talking about Miura's famous Berserk manga.
I was saving that for the bottom since it's the biggest one I got.
Yeah, I mean, I had to. I have that and another series that I want to talk about, but I just wanted to geek out a little bit with you about Berserk because it is such a staple. And even though it's like a huge series to commit as well, it goes by so fast. It's dark, it's brutal. You're not ready for it when it hits you, but it's so much fun to read, and the characters and it proves that you can do a very violent series but still retain the maturity of a well-written book. And it's not played for laughs or fan servicey moments. Like there are shock value moments in Berserk, but I feel, and this is going to sound a little bit weird, like they're part of that world for a reason. They're not thrown in there for shock value. Like there is a purpose to, or a message of that violence and assault and all that stuff. It's not always pretty. It's not great. It's never great, but it does work for the story, and you get to see characters evolve from trauma and demon slaying, I guess. So if anybody's wondering what the hell Berserk is about, I don't think we've covered it on Omnibros or OTAKUBROS, but it's basically, in a nutshell, Guts, the swordsman, gets into a heap of trouble and is trying to slay a bunch of demons to restore the world from insanity to sanity, in a spoiler-free nutshell.
He's along the way. He's also, it's some personal things that he has to fight towards. So it's that, I think, is what really drives the series, is like, it's this really cool and well-developed world with really interesting ideas and interesting looking, like really gruesome villains and monsters and stuff. But what really drives it is the human emotions behind like what's going on, and there's like intense betrayal and just heartbreaking sequences throughout the series that's what kept me going. It's like, you know, what is the from Django, he's like, you had my interest, but now you
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. My curiosity.
whatever it is that he says, but it's like the artwork and seeing all the demons and different stuff and like the god hand,
Mm-hmm.
that piqued my that got me curious about it. But then reading the story and feeling the just that raw emotion behind everything and what Guts is going through and why he's doing what he's doing and what he's working towards, that's what got me invested and what kept me going with the series. And Dark Horse, of course, is releasing these really awesome hardcovers that these are greatly oversized in comparison to
Oh my god, they look amazing.
like a normal volume of manga.
Mm-hmm.
They're perfect, big, faux leather bound looking tomes. It's perfect for this type of series. It has the brand embossed into the front. You've got the red, crimson lettering all over it and stuff. It just works perfectly for this series. The artwork works so well on these huge pages. I've got to find a good example that also doesn't have too much boobies on it or anything.
Yeah, we don't want to get flagged.
But like, just a really great example of how great the artwork benefits from these increased pages. And honestly, not a bad price. What is it, 50 or $60 for one of these?
I think it's 50.
$50, and they each collect 3 of the normal paperbacks, which are already like $13-14 anyway.
Yep.
So you're not paying that much more for one of these than you would if you got all the paperbacks. I would recommend, though, if you want to try it out, I'd recommend trying out the paperback editions first. And it really takes off after the first few volumes. The first few volumes are just kind of an introduction to the world, and then you start getting into like what's actually going on. Because I was like, the beginning of it, I was like, what? And then after I kept going, I was like, oh, okay. So yeah, Berserk, that was one of my picks as well. I love that series, and I'm disappointed that I got into it so late. Because I would have loved to. Well, I'm not that disappointed because I didn't have to wait as much as a lot of other people did.
I was just going to say that.
But at the same time, like, I wish that I had been reading this for a while. And one of my friends in high school read it, and like he was reading it when I was in high school, and so I literally messaged him and was like, "Why didn't you make me read this?" And he was like, "I told you to read." I'm like, "Yeah, but you didn't make me read it. You just like read it in front of me."
I always thought, like, I don't know if you know this, but the company that did the animation for the old 90s show, I think they were the ones that did the Pokemon anime, if I remember correctly.
Really?
Which is insane to me that Berserk, Pokemon, totally different properties.
Opposite sides of the spectrum there.
Yeah. But like, I have an uncle that he didn't read manga or anything. He doesn't read that stuff, but he liked all sorts of like animation, movies, geeky comic stuff, and he saw that series when it debuted, and it was like the way he sold it to me back then was like, this is something that you cannot watch. Like, this is like for adults. And for a long time, up until I met everybody at the Facebook groups and all that stuff, I always thought like Berserk is something that should be kept away in a closet, and you shouldn't look at it. It's like a forbidden thing. But I finally caved in. I think you sold me on it, and Omar and all that stuff last year. So I read it last year and the beginning of this year, and it's amazing. Like at the beginning, it's not the most solid introduction because a lot of people will like facepalm at the brutality, but if you give it a couple more chapters, it just hooks you right in and will not let you go.
So my next one, this is a little different direction in it, but still in the more mature vein of stuff. And this might be controversial for some people, but I know a lot of people really love the series, and that's Goodnight Punpun.
Ooh, nice.
Now, this is a very... This series goes in places.
It can be controversial for some people.
It's very much very dealing with depression and stuff like that, with very heavy topics such as suicide. And if that's something that you cannot, you can't read something like that, if that puts you off, then this is not going to be a series for you. But this was just it. I feel like the series is really important, and a lot of people owe it to themselves to at least try it out, because of the way that it made me feel. I don't even know how to describe. Like, I had every emotion that I could going through this series. I found it funny. I found it charming. I found it disgusting. I found it scary. Like, by the time I finished reading the series, I was numb. Like, I put down the last volume. Actually, no, the penultimate volume. I felt physically ill, and I sat there reading it, and I was like, I finished it and I put it down, and I was like, I've never had a book make me feel this way before, have such a visceral reaction to what's going on here. And then I read the last volume, and it wrapped everything up, and I felt a little bit better, but it was like my outlook for that entire day, and probably the next day, I was just like, shit. The series focuses on a young boy named Punpun Punyama, and it follows him as he grows from adolescence into young adulthood. The early parts of the series follow him as he is in grade school. We get to see his dysfunctional family as he grows up, and kind of how he copes with reality, and how he copes with the things that happen around him, and how maybe the way he copes with things are not that healthy, and it leads towards him becoming a less than healthy teenager and a less than healthy young adult. It's fantastically told. I mean, I can't really say anything more than that. Just the way that it made me feel, I've never felt that way before, and I've never felt that way again about after reading a book. It's definitely not for everyone, but if that sounds like something that you might be interested in, I'd recommend checking it out. I've read a lot of Inyo Asano, who did that run. I've read a lot of his work after this, and nothing, like, it's all good, but nothing has measured up. Like, I haven't read another thing that I think comes to that level as Punpun does. I just think it's such a masterfully woven story. And it's also, I have to point out, like, the little tissue bird looking dude at the cover, that's our main character. His family are the only ones that look like that, have that cartoony look. Everyone else is made to look more realistic. I know a lot of people have said, oh, it's so you can place yourself in that character a lot more easily. I don't know, like, there's a lot of interpretation as to why he looks like that, like why Asano chose to draw him as being really cartoony. I also think that I have a lot more of a grim outlook on the conclusion of this series than a lot of other people did, because I remember after reading it, and after a couple of other people read it, in our chat, like, we were discussing it, and my outlook was a lot more grim. Like, people have a happy... People look at the ending as being pretty happy, and I looked at it as being really sad. But yeah, so I recommend, not for everyone, but I have to put it in this video. I have to say that it's one of my personal essentials. Since I've read it, that's something that I don't think that my collection should ever be without.
Yeah, and like you said, it goes into heavy topics, but if you can deal with it, or you can read it, you are going to find it somewhat therapeutic, because it does go through and examines young life or young adulthood and all that stuff. And you may see yourself in certain situations. I certainly did. And by the end of it, I was just really mad at the characters for what they were doing. But I understood that it was a story that needed to happen. But yeah, it's great, and the art in it is beautiful. I love the artwork from Asano. I think it's just really masterful, in my opinion.
I think one of the things about the series, and one of my interpretations of like the character being drawn that way, is it's an evolution of his mental state, because especially later in the series you'll see him change a lot. You'll have like a human body with differently animated heads and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
He changes a lot throughout the series, and it's a really great way of portraying how, and I'm saying this as someone who, like I've talked about before, like I struggle with depression and stuff myself, like a lot, and it's affected who I am and how I am with people in my life. And I can feel that like idea of like your emotions changing who you are, like your emotions, in his case physically changing who he is, in my case like, and I was literally just talking to my wife about it, like she told me one day like, you need to figure this out because you change when these things happen, and if you don't figure it out, I won't be here. Like, so we worked that out, and we worked on my mental state, and I'm in a much healthier place.
Nice.
And so reading this, I had that previous perspective on things, and I definitely saw myself, not really saw myself, but I saw someone that was going through things in a similar way that I felt.
Yeah.
It was a really awesome, because I've never seen it the same way before. Did you have another series?
I was going to mention to lighten the mood a little bit. I was going to mention Full Metal Alchemist because it is a classic, but I'm seeing some mangas in the chat, and it reminded me of how much I love Death Note from Shonen Jump. And I think it's a good suspense thriller, cat and mouse type story that a lot of people will like. The adrenaline of this kid who now has godlike powers and can take out anyone, and the police trying to catch him. And it's a very cool, fantastic story. With it really transcended the medium because we even had a crappy Netflix movie about it, and everybody knew what, at least in early 2000s, everybody knew what Death Note was. You might not know what friggin' Hunter x Hunter might be, but you do know about Death Note because it was everywhere. You could go to a friggin' Hot Topic, and there were tons of merchandise based on Death Note, and everybody was into it. And I really think a lot of people like it, and it's a fun title. There are some couple slumps near the end that I know it's not everybody's favorite, but for the most part, the story's pretty fun with great characters, and the artwork once again is pretty stellar in my honest opinion.
Yeah, I remember reading that as it was coming out in the US, like volume by volume, and just absolutely adoring it. I haven't read it since high school, so it's definitely been over a decade.
Yeah.
This has been a minute, but I loved it all the way through. Like I did, and it just like, because it was such a different type of series than any other shonen title.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about, the good guy fighting like monsters and saving the world and all of this stuff. It's a real, for a series that's honestly like aimed at a teenage audience, it touched on really mature topics of morality and stuff. And
it got pretty dark too.
Yeah, it gets really dark. Just the idea of, if you had this device where you literally could kill anyone, how would you use it? And then I think that it answers that question with something that a lot of people would say, and they're like, oh, well, I'd kill the bad guys. But like, what does that mean? What is the definition of that? And how do you get away with it? And that's like, it follows up on those simple questions and gives you these complex answers that turn into just such an interesting story. And then they throw in there, because it's a manga, they have demons and stuff in there too, to make it a little more interesting. But even those characters are super cool.
Yep.
Super interesting. So I have two more on my side. This is a series. This is a really long running series, and it's one that I've absolutely loved for a long time. And it's gaining a lot, or it has gained a ton of popularity in the past several years because of an anime adaptation. And I'm so thankful that it has, because it's led towards us getting better or more American releases of the series, and that's JoJo's Bizarre Adventure. JoJo, like I said, it's a really long-running series. I think since '87 it's been around.
Oh God,
It's separated into 8 parts right now, and each part focuses on a different primary or a different protagonist by the name of JoJo, or something that can be JoJo. So the first series is Jonathan, the second series is Joseph, Jonathan Joestar, Joseph Joestar, third series is Jotaro Kujo, and so on and so forth. Every series has a different main character. It's hard to sum it up in a nutshell, but basically it's the battle between the Joestar family and Dio Brando. And this look at basically ultimate good versus, from the beginning, it's like ultimate good versus ultimate evil. And it evolves into different things as it goes forward. So the first part, Phantom Blood, is not really the most popular part, but it does set everything up. The second part, featuring Joseph, is Battle Tendency. That's where it really starts to get more closer towards what you see going forward. And then it's part 3, which is the most popular part, and the one that's been published in the US for the longest time, where they introduce the concept of stands, which are basically these superpowered spirit avatar partners that join the main characters to fight against other people that have stands. And then part 4 is the most recent one that they've got published in the US. Volume 2 just recently came out. These hardcovers are slightly oversized from normal volumes of manga. There are 3 for part 1, 4 for part 2, I think 10 for part 3, and then there will be 9, I think, for part 4, 2 of which are out. We haven't seen if they're going to do the parts beyond that. Part 5 recently concluded in the anime, and they haven't announced whether they're going to do part 6. And part 7 and 8 are their own things. I don't want to talk a lot about JoJo, because I talked a lot about JoJo last time, and I also think that we need to do a JoJo-centric episode.
Oh, we will.
Yeah, it needs to happen. But it's such a fantastic series. It's so... it's bizarre. It's the name. It's really bizarre. That really says it. It has bizarre characters, bizarre locale, bizarre ideas from beginning to end that you just can't help to keep wanting to tune in and see what the hell they're going to think of next. And it also is interesting because it uses a lot of it. The characters don't always rely on strength. At least as you progress forward in the series, it's not always about the strength of the characters, but it's about their ingenuity with how they can use what abilities they've been given. So while in part 3, the main character, Jotaro, might have his ability is mostly strength based, going forward, we have different characters, different protagonists with different abilities that are a little bit less about being strong, but ask more of them to be smart about what they're doing and how they defeat their their villains and stuff. And the villains are the ones with the even more interesting abilities that wind up being these things that you're sitting there like, how the hell can they get out of that? Like, what are they going to do? And that's most of the intrigue right there. The rest of the intrigue is finding out what different musical reference they're going to throw in there, what different band or musical artist they're going to name a stand after. That's like a large part of what keeps me entertained. And I love how bad the American versions of things are, because the licensing issues don't allow them to use the actual names for stuff. So you have like was it Crazy Diamond winds up being Shining Diamond because they can't say it, something like that. Like it's dumb stuff like that. I think, was it Oingo Boingo, the brothers in part 3, they have to be called different. So they call them Mandatas and Zenyatta, which is in itself another musical reference. So I'm surprised they got away with that, but whatever. Anyway, I love JoJo. I've been reading it forever, since I was in high school. It's fantastic. And like I said, I'm so happy that it's gained more of a following in the US and more popularity in general, because it's so nice to have these hardcovers. And I hope that they continue the anime, and I hope they continue to publish these in the US.
I'm looking online because you said about part 6, and apparently it is supposed to premiere April 2020.
Oh, shit. Oh, fuck. Okay.
Yeah.
God damn it. I didn't know that. Okay, fuck. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. Jesus Christ, I'm pumped. Like, part 6 is very divisive, is a part that a lot of people don't enjoy, and I think that a lot of that has to do, personally, the conclusion is it's something. Like, something happens. But if they do part 6, I think that like they have to go into part 7 and 8 if they do part 6, unless they make the conclusion a lot more like conclusive. They have to go in, like, God bless it. I'm really excited about that. Shit, man, I'm surprised I haven't seen anything about it before that.
Let me double check, because I did read about it, and I am looking at something. It's a YouTube video. I can't play it, but I'm gonna look for more info on it. But yeah, it is supposed to be set for 2020. I've only seen a couple anime episodes, so I don't know about the series at length. But it is the one word I always use to describe it is it's a very a bombastic, creative show. I love how creative and wonderful it all looks. The visuals and stuff just looks fantastic.
And Araki, the creator's like sense of style with his characters is just beyond anything that I've seen in any series, period. And it's something that goes beyond this series. Like, he's collaborated with various fashion magazines and brands and stuff. Like, I think recently there was a Gucci collaboration that he did, where he will draw the characters in these clothes and stuff. And if you see, I probably don't have the best examples on me because it really takes off further on in the series. They wear these really like intricate outfits and stuff that you don't see in other shonen titles. And another thing that this series moves in a really interesting direction, where early on in the series it's like the extremely masculine, big ol' muscle, like huge superhero style looking guys. And as it moves forward, each part, it kind of starts moving away from that. And as you get into like parts 4 and then 5 and 6 and forward, like in the new parts as well, you go from these huge muscular strong guys to lean and very, in a lot of instances, very feminine characters.
Yeah.
Very feminine looking in the way that they appear and in the way that they dress. And it's such just a great touch of the series, like allowing that touch, that femininity to be on display and against the stereotypical like macho masculine WWE wrestler type guys. So I greatly appreciate that. And I remember I was reading part 7 recently, and we were talking in our chat about like the colored version that I was reading, and I was like, all the boys have pretty lipstick on. It's great. Like I was like, I think it was telling Nelson like he needs to read the colored version. I was like, yeah, because if you don't read the colored version, you don't get to see all that pretty lipstick that corresponds with the colored clothes they wear. Did you have anything else? I have just one more book that I was going to mention.
I think that's about it for me. An honorable mention would be, of course, Full Metal Alchemist, which is pretty famous too. But yeah.
My last one, I chose this one because I think that it's one that'll easily be skipped over by a lot of people. And that is, and I read this one semi-recently as well, that's Inuyashiki. This is a series, it's pretty short, it's only 10 volumes, and it's written, drawn by Hiroya Oku, who did Gantz. It's not, if you're familiar with Gantz, it is not nearly as violent as Gantz. It's not nearly as mature as Gantz, but it is a fantastically told series that basically the main character is this old man who dies in this really strange coincidental accident. And he comes back, though, and all of a sudden he's a robot. Like, he has all these superpowers. So basically these aliens crash on the earth, he gets killed, and they rebuild him. They're like, oh shit, we fucked up and we killed this guy. And so they rebuild his body, and he has weapons and stuff. It turns out another person, this kid, also had the same thing happen, and he died and gets rebuilt with robotic parts. And the two are at the opposite ends of the morality spectrum. The main character, our old man Inuyashiki, he is on the good side of things, where he's like, he has to cope with the idea that he finds out he's no longer human, and he's very depressed. But then he finds out, he's like, you know what? What's human is not what I'm made of, but it's what I feel. And so he tells himself, I have to. He's like, I am going to show my humanity by using these abilities to greater purposes in the world. I'm going to save people. I'm going to make things better in the world. I'm going to stop crime and stuff like that. And so we see him go forward and do just that. Whereas the other guy is like, fuck it, I'm not a human anymore. I'm going to kill everything. Okay. And so it comes to this really, there's a lot of existential question throughout, which was really fun. And then that battle between the two sides, where it's very simple, but the way it's told is just so well done. And if you're familiar with the artwork from Gantz, it's so greatly drawn. And it has great, emotional beats. It's funny, has great action. I think that it has everything that's really important in a series. It's only 10 volumes long. You can find it easily. I think it's something that a lot of people might skip over, but it's so worth it. And I think if you're not wanting to buy a 10-volume manga that is honestly such a quick read, you could probably read the whole thing in less than one afternoon. There's also a rather short anime. I think it's only like one season, 11, 12 episodes or something. So that's out there. It's one that I absolutely loved when I read it. It made a great impression on me, and I think that it's something that a lot of people should check out because they might skip out on it otherwise. But that's all I've got for right now. The one that I wanted to bring out but is in a box that I can't find at the moment was Battle Angel Alita, but I think that's something we've been planning on doing an episode for anyway. Mm-hmm. And I need to wrap up because we're a little over an hour on this, and I got to get back to life, back to reality. So
yeah, sure, no problem.
So I didn't have enough time to really go through a lot of questions and stuff from people because I picked out a little more books than I probably should have, and I had a really good time talking about all of them with you today. And I think that this is an episode that could be recur with our show, especially with other people coming on. Some of the other people that we do this show with can let us know what they think their essential books are. So I do hope to do this again, and I hope to have a lot of feedback from audiences, what they think that essential books are, and if what we missed or what, which of the series that we chose are crap that we should not be calling essential.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has such different opinions that that is part of the fun to see what everybody picks.
For sure. So as we sign off real quick, Most, if not all, of these books should be found on our amazing sponsor, InStockTrades.com. I say most, if not all, because I haven't checked their stock on them lately, and some of them go out of stock at some points. So, but they will be found on there for great discounted prices, fantastic packaging, free shipping on orders of $50 or more, amazing customer service. InStockTrades.com. That is our amazing sponsor. We love them so much, and I think that everyone else should too. Gio, where can they find you?
You can find me at my channel, A Week in Geekdom, where I talk about anime, manga, comics, and everything else in between. That's A Week in Geekdom.
And you can find me right here on the Omnibus Collector Network on my channel, Ryleymo, Ryleymo. At this point, I'm basically just saving my next video until I get install the library. I might do a haul or review in between, but I don't want to promise anything. But 1 month out from our house being done, and the library is going to be great. So we're excited. My wife's excited. My dogs are excited, even though they don't understand it. And it's going to be awesome. So anyway, thank you so much, everybody, for joining in. I appreciate everyone spending this evening with us and free time watching and listening to us. And we hope to see you in a couple weeks on the next episode of Otaku Bros.
Peace.
Peace out.
This is the awkward part where I